Houston, Texas.
Late Night Hustle with Jessica Jeanz. Another Hustletown Network interview on 97.9 The Box. The real sound of H-Town.
Another interview of the Hustletown Network, and we have an OG in the game today. We have Shadow in the building, producer, rapper, legendary status here in the building with us. And so I want to just jump right in and tell us your earliest memories of working with some of the most legendary artists here in Houston.
Okay, easy. The first person I got with when I got in the game was K-Rino, Dopey, Egypt E's the one that showed me how to run the board. I actually asked him to, say, hey, one day, can you show me how to run the board? He left the room, and I was like, oh my God, did I just go over the boundaries? He comes with another chair and puts it right next to his. He says, come on, I'll show you. And he showed me how to make my beat. I made my first beat. It was whack as shit. And but he told me, he made me record it on a cassette. He says, go home, listen to it. I was like, God, dog, I suck. But he taught me how to adjust things, and he taught me that it was a 16 plus. It was a beautiful board, and then the Ensoniq ASR 10 came out. I got hurt on my job. I got a scar right here, and from that compensation, I was working at Randall's. My dad was my attorney. He got me about $2,500. I bought me a $500 car. And I bought me a $1,500 keyboard.
Nice.
Straight up. And I told myself, I said, I'm going to do this, and I'm in it to win it. And one of the first people I started working with was Point Blank. That's where I kind of dug, my teeth. I sunk my teeth into it. And but initially, what really got me started was the Beat Street, movie. I just caught the hip hop bug. It bit me, and it bit me hard. And my twin, Grim, he was like, Paul, he thought I was losing it because I was started to wear parachute pants and, bandanas, different color, like, fluorescent, fat laces and all this stuff. And it's like, what the freak? He was in the rock and roll. He was a, punk rock. You can imagine, Sex Pistols,
Ramones.
Ramones. He was listening to Van Halen was one of his most favorite. I'm talking about the Van Halen with David Lee Roth.
Yes.
Say back, that the real Van Halen. Now, I love Sammy Hagar, but the real Van Halen. So he didn't like hip hop at all. In fact, he used to stomp on my radio. My mom would buy me a new radio because I was a straight A student, and she would buy me a new radio. And I had boombox, I had stereos, and every single stereo that I had, my brother broke. Like he would break because I was jamming. Because that 808 was kicking. It was harder than that rock. You know what I'm saying? His strum, my boom. Now I'm in a position, even though I'm known as one of the legend pioneers that started it. Actually, the founder. Yeah. I catch myself now in today's thinking I got to prove myself all over again because the youngsters, they like, I want to work with Young Easy. I want to work with, Wolfpack, and I want to work with Padron and all these other guys that I'm with, Salman, all these guys that are now up and coming.
Right.
And I'm trying to get back into that, that scene. I had got out of it because of my family. I lost my family behind this music thing.
Wow. And
2006 and 7, my wife just gave up after 15 years of being in the business. I chased my dream. Well, she didn't
sign up for all that.
She didn't sign up for that at all. Mm-hmm. And so she had enough, and she left. She picked up and left.
Wow. And
I had to make a decision to go fight for my family or stay in the game because I was right at the point. We were working with Fat Joe. I was working with people. I was doing things that I was fixing to work with A.B. Quintanilla. I mean, these things me and Happy Perez were like on an even plane. We were at the same place in the same area. And look where Happy's at now. Mm-hmm. See, if I would have stayed in the game, I'm not saying I would have been where Happy's at, but I would have been, somewhere.
Right.
But I decided to go fight for my family. It meant more to me. So I quit the music cold turkey for 6-7 years.
Wow.
And so now I'm coming back into it 10 years later, and I don't feel relevant. Because, like you just said, you gotta show these people what you've been through before they can just accept you. Mm-hmm. And that's where I found I'm like, And I never say I'm a legend or anything. That people label me that. I'm very humble about it. But they do tell me, it's like, you're the first one. I wasn't the first one to be rapping out there. There was Proper Dose, there was Miss Color Mafia, there was Mexicans and Capping, there was Generic Posse. And those were all out there. What happened was my brother and I were the first ones to put a CD on the shelf. And then when that happened, it changed the game.
It did.
Because it was no longer, because back then we were doing freestyle battles or battle raps. And that's how Carlos saw us. We were at the Unicorn Ballroom in the North Side. And I've known Carlos since I was 10 years old. We all grew up in the same neighborhood. So it wasn't like I didn't know who Carlos was. Carlos was the one my mom told me to watch out. Like, don't hang out with Billy and don't hang out with that one. She didn't even know who Carlos' name. Those two guys, don't hang out with them. Of course, we do everything that our parents tell us not to do. Right? So we got to know each other. And before all, we were riding bikes and riding skateboards before any of this rap thing. Carlos went and did his thing in pharmaceuticals and street pharmaceuticals things. My dad and I was fortunate to have a father and mother. Like, some of my friends didn't have fathers and mothers. But my father, he instilled in us to be something and do your research. And he was into education. We had to have straight A's. Once we made our first A, my dad was like, well, you already made your first A, you messed up. Because if you bring me a B or a C, I know that's not your potential.
Best, right.
So we became doing that and everything. And once we got into the situation where I started doing the music thing, I noticed the other Mexicanos were out there. And the only thing that I remember growing up to was like Santana. Was the Mexican thing to listen to on rock and roll stations,
Right.
Or,
even Linda Ronstadt, but she had a Ronstadt last name. It wasn't until years later I found out that she was Mexicana. I was like, wow.
Exactly. And so we, upcoming, I always wanted to, like, how can I make a mark? And it initially started when I saw the movie Beat Street back in 1980. And hip hop, that bug bit me. And it bit me hard. And there's 4 elements in hip hop, and I wanted to achieve every single element. So the first thing I did is I became a break dancer, like everybody else. And I took it to the point where I was in the Houston Playboys back in those days, if you remember that. And we even traveled, out of state to even California. So I hit that mark. I said, okay, one down, And the next thing I picked up is I picked up a spray can and I started doing graffiti. And that's how I got my name, because I'm a twin, and for one, and then I would dress all in black at night, in the middle of the night, and I go out there and I start spraying walls, and became a member of a group, then we, go
So is that
there.
when you started tagging your name? Is that how you got your name? Okay.
Mm-hmm. I started tagging my name, Shadow, everywhere. Trains, walls, back of Wieners on Telephone Road, if you know where that's at. I had put pieces, but back then it wasn't just tagging. It was actually, to me, it was like I wanted to put a mural. I wanted to bomb that wall. In 1994, so I became a graffiti artist. That's
Check.
That's 2. So while I was still doing that, I actually did an art show with Bree Jacques, Kid Styles, and the infamous Gonzo 247.
Okay.
So, and I'm honored to ever had that, in my resume. Yeah. I've done a wall with Gonzo, and Gonzo is the
He's
graffiti.
Immaculate, yes.
He's doing planes now. I mean,
wow.
You know what I mean? He's taking it to another level. And I just got through Instagram. I was like, bro, I said, man, I'm just honored to have, shared a wall with you. You know what I'm saying? So once I started doing that same year, that was 1994, I was putting out my first album with Grant, me and my brother. And we put out Making It Matter Worse. And I started off being a DJ. My first project was it was called Deep Instrumental Productions. And what I would do is, I didn't have a rapper. My brother was into rock and roll. He didn't like hip hop at all. So I was like, man, I still to this day, before I go out on stage, throw up. So I don't have the the stage,
Yeah, you don't have that down. Like it still always gets you nervous.
It does.
Yeah.
To the point where I literally throw up, So I was like, Paul, you're gonna have to be my rapper. Nah, Van Halen.
Yeah.
U2, Depeche Mode, and that's what he was, he was into that punk rock, he was a punk rocker. We used to call him Trench Coat Mafia. He had a gray trench coat, combat boots, on a skateboard with his hair just dangling, you know what
skaters.
I mean? He was like, nah, I'm not going to do it. So my first tape that I ever put out was a cassette tape, gray tape, and it was called Deep Instrumental Productions. I made beats, and I would get comedians like Richard Pryor, Cheech and Chong, Flip Wilson, Rodney Dangerfield, all the records that my dad had, you know what I'm saying? Because back then they used to have vinyl, and I would put that on top of my beat. And I would go down, and then I put it in my car, right? And I had my 18s back then, and I had, I put it in my car, booming, and I would go to the gas stations. I'd go to the edge of town, and I would drive back home, and I would stop at all the gas stations and all the, really it was back then, it was blacks, you know what I'm saying? Because I lived near South Park, and they were like, and what's that? And then they hear Richard Pryor telling jokes, and man, that go hard. And then I was selling them for $5 or 2 for $5 or whatever, and that's how I was slanging my tapes. My brother, let's say he was a street pharmacist, and he was doing his thing, and I never was a person to do, drugs or sell drugs or anything like that. So my brother and I are total opposites, by the way. I'm right-handed, he's left-handed. He's got long hair, I got short hair. I got a mole here, his mole's here. So we're classified as mirror twins. We've been total opposites all our lives. That's why he's in rock and roll, I'm in, hip-hop. So when he saw my stack, and he's like, nah, man, you selling? I was like, yeah, man. Dope sells itself. That's where it comes from. Dope sells itself. Me and Carlos used to say that to each other. Carlos came up with it. I'm not going to lie to anybody, but man, dope sells itself, and I got dope. It ain't your dope. It ain't your, marijuana, but it's, it's dope.
Yeah.
What dope? You ain't got no dope. I said, man, I got dope. And he saw my stacks coming up, and he's like, how you making that? I said, man, I'm pushing my, my tapes. You want to be a rapper now? And he's like, nah, I don't want to be a rapper, man. Ain't no rock and roll and rap. So I showed him the song Rock Box. I said, really? So check the song out. I said, listen to the words that he's talking. And I gave him Rock Box. My brother came back with a rhyme. And at that time, I was meeting up with K-Rino. The person that got me involved with the industry was a guy named Jody, Stephen and Jody Baggett. And that's Dopey, the Holocauster. And if you know DJ Deuce, he's a DJ. In the back of the days, they had a crew called Fast Forward. They did that for a while, and Deuce took me in as a DJ, and he showed me turntables. Right? I'm like, oh, another element. You know what I'm saying? So I started learning. He showed me how to spin the turntables and mix, and I was like, oh my God, I was just. So then he introduced me to K-Rino, and K-Rino back in the days had a classroom. Like, this is how I remember it. I actually talked to K-Rino about this the other because I never had no classroom. I said, I seen it, maybe I dreamt it, but I see a podium and I see chairs, and I mean, back in those days, the class that I came up was Street Military with Icy Hot. You had Gangsta Nip. Who else was in there? Klondike Cat, AC Chill, rest in peace. Flea, Pharaoh, all of them. All these who are legends now, right? That's the class I came up, like I call it like a draft class, and that's the class that I came up with. Well, I introduced my brother to K-Rino one day. I said, hey man, just gotta come over here, man. You gotta go with K-Rino, man. If he stamps it, man, hey. And I really wanted to be the first Mexicano, rapper / producer, whatever. I just wanted to be the first one on the shelf. That to me was my goal. I was like, man, and it wasn't like I was trying to show the blacks that we can do it better or anything. It's just that I said, man, just like the Santana, just like the, Linda Ronstadt thing, I just wanted to I wanted my name to be in history. Had nothing to do with money. My dad's a lawyer. He's successful and everything. Money was never a thing for me and my brother, like at all. We were brought up to like make a mark, make history. You know what I'm saying? And that cared more to me and my brother than anything. So we were just like, and my brother didn't want to do it. I said, so he went to a class without me, you know what I'm saying? And I guess the story is, and this is why my brother and I are working on a book together, because we did the same thing, but he has different views and I have my views. So it's the same story, but, two different views. And the way he says it is that he went up there and he had his rhyme, so much violence. He had one rhyme, by the way, so much violence and killing, the threat, and the willing, how they live in. And I remember, and he went and gave it to K-Rino. Here's my rap. And K-Rino goes, hey, man, we nobody's going to rap your rap. We write our own raps here. We rap our own raps here. So they were doing a song, so he went up there and he had a podium. This is how I remember, unless it's a dream. And my brother did this, he rapped his rap. And there's Barrow and Flea, and I'm not saying, and they all just, and they started writing because my brother had came so hard, you know what I'm saying? And nothing against them guys, you know what I'm saying? But this is, my brother's telling me the story. I was like, you sure? You know what I'm saying? Like, nah, man. I said, so you that cold? You know what I'm saying? If you that cold, then let's get down with it. Let's do an album. And so I became the DJ and everything, scratched that off the thing. The next thing was to be a rapper. I said, I don't rap, you know what I mean? So my brother started doing all his rap stuff, and we started getting together, and we started working on an album. We worked for our dad. My dad was like, if you ain't going to go out and get you a job, you're going to come work for me. And I'm like, okay. So my brother was working with my dad at the time, and my dad actually said, if you're going to do this album, Paul, and you're going to go do it with Randy, you're going to do it on your vacation time. So you're going to do it, and you got 40 hours to do it, which is basically a 5-day week,
yep.
Right? And my dad said, I'll put in the money that I'm going to pay for the thing, that's what's going to go for your, to pay for your album.
Right.
So back then, there was no rap studios, right? So we went, my dad got a hold of Nacho Studios on Patterson over there by the SoCo in Patton Street, Northside. And I walk in there, and it's a Tejano, one of them, I was like, what is this? That 2-inch reel. I'm like, he's like, hey, make it work. I said, all right. So we all went up there, and we started, we made that album. And once we made that album, we had to do it in that 1 week. We did it in 48 hours.
Wow.
Oh, 40 hours total. I think we did it in 48, like an extra hour. But we had to literally clock in like my brother was at work. You know what I mean? At the studio. And whatever we didn't finish that day, we had to do it. I'm jumping around, but we had met Fileto and Balasso, you know what I'm saying, before we did that album. Because Paul was like, I need to go find a DJ. You know what I'm saying?
What about me?
You don't know how to cut, which I knew how to mix. He's right. So he found not one, but he found 2 DJs, and that's Fileto and Balasso. And we named them. We all named each other. I named Grim, and we all named. Fileto was more like, because cuts, right? So that's how he got his name. And Balasso, he just shot first and asked questions later kind of dude. And he was the one that actually would go in the crates and find all our samples, and he was a DJ too, right? And he's a good DJ, but his gift was finding those gems.
Yeah, producing and being able to
finding. Because back then you had an ASR 10 or 16 plus, which is what I learned on, and you had a sampling machine, and so everybody was sampling back then. That was like the thing, or an MPC, and you just sample and stuff. And I'm not kidding. Balasso was just, really good at finding samples. Not just samples, but we used to have like stabs. We call them stabs because Fileto was saying, meow, meow, meow. So we had stabs and all that. And it was all part of the technique. And we actually made an outline. We were like, okay, we got this song right there. Okay, we got to do this. So it was a structure about it. And everybody was on board. And once we finished that first album in 48 hours or less, we were like, man, is this what we want to go with? You know what I'm saying?
How old were you guys around this time?
I was 24.
Okay.
The album came out in 1994. It took us from 1993 to 94 to make. And I was 24. And I had actually got hurt on the job. And the first thing I bought with my compensation check was an ASR 10. And my dad bought it for me. My brother and I were fortunate that our parents let us be as creative. They used to let us paint and draw on our walls in our rooms no matter. One time I fogged the house so much because I was spray painting, right? With crying out, like real crying out. And my mom's like, Kick, oh my God. And she's, covering me. What is that? I said, I painted my room. And I had that whole thing like all in. My wife, my mom was like, oh my God, Randy, air out this house. But that's what they used to do. My dad and we used to do murals on our walls. And that transpired into the creativity in the music. So we never had any boundaries as far as being creative, and we were always at the point where we wanted to put out something that we like. We weren't gonna do anything that anybody else was doing because no Mexicans were rapping at the time. When we put that out, we used to hit the 97 box van at Boomerang, and I think it was Jimmy Olsen back in the days, and he would be riding in the van, and so we were always looking for free, advertisement. That's what we would spray SEO less. Okay, well, let's not put, but we would, that was to us.
Now y'all know.
That was our marketing, right? Go get a spray can and just gangster tag SEO less everywhere, right? And then SEO less turned into 5735 because back in the days we used to wear pagers. So whenever you would write a note to somebody, you would spell out whatever you would say, and then that would be your. And so SEO less 5735 was like our numbers, like studio. Okay, I gotta go. So it was 5735 SCLS, Southeast Latin Sector. And we used to spray paint that all over the place. Wow. And that was our marketing. Another free marketing was going to the van that Jimmy Olsen was driving at Boomerang. And while he was promoting the club, we'd go there and he, hey, y'all want to give a shout out? Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Aggravated. We over here. We painting up, man. We got girls. We got drink specials. And we knew the business part of it. And that's what Jimmy, doing my job, you know what I'm saying? Yeah, but next thing you know, the crowds were, and you know what I'm saying? And they were seeing them. The guy that owned Boomerang, his name was Patrick. When he first saw my brother in the group, he thought we were black. And he said, I got another show coming, you know what I'm saying? Y'all come perform, you know what I'm saying? He never seen us. Wow. Y'all come perform and everything. I want to say it was Too Short, or something like that. And we were like, Street Military was performing. And we're like, all right. So we show up, 4 Mexicans, right?
Where's the group?
Yeah, exactly. And we were like, it's us, you know what I'm saying? He just like, oh, man. This is an all black, club. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of like the one that was over off of, what was it, Club 880 or 808, Club 808 on over there by Martin Luther King and Griggs, by the King's Flea Market. And it's all black, and he was just like, I don't know, maybe. I said, come on, man. Give us a try. And our single was I'm Your Future, because we had just came out with that, which is another long story because I was not even a part of Aggravated at all. Never was an Aggravated member at all.
Really?
Right. Because me and Filetto fought before. When we had our album, we broke up. Me and Filetto broke up. And it's a personal thing, and I don't really like to put it out there, but people know, and then whoever knows, they know what it was. But we all fought each other at one time or another. The most hated members. We all fought, literally fought.
So
like
tell us the
fisticuffs.
transition. Was that part of the transition between Aggravated and Most Hated?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Initially, it was, like I said, Southeast Latin Sector. Making the matter worse, it was us 4, right? SCLS. And it was me, Grim, Filetto, and Balasso. And we did that album. We put it out. And it was semi-successful. Oh, we're going to be rich. Oh, we're gonna put this album out. My album's on the shelf, boy, but royalty checks come in. We got my own. Didn't happen. It's just man, did we fail? What happened? You know what I'm saying? My dad was like, well, here, I gave you a chance, okay, move on. And we were like, nah, we need to do another one. And so during that time, me and Filetto had gotten to a riff, let's say, you know what I'm saying, and it broke us up. Actually, they were living with me, Filetto and Balasso, and I kicked them out. And it was it wasn't mutual either. It was like, go, get out of here. In fact, Balasso got locked up during that time for 10 years based on a gun that I had, and there was one in the chamber, and he took my gun and went to Lake Jackson and shot it up in the air in some parking lot. 18 people were there. He got 18 counts of aggravated assault with a deadly weapon.
Just like
got 10 years, just like that, Brazoria County, But, so Palazzo's, kind of like out the picture. Me and Fleto, we fought, you know what I'm saying? And Palazzo does his thing. He gets out and other stuff, and Fleto goes move to Lake Jackson. About 6 months later, my brother comes over to the house, and he says, hey, man, I did a song with Fleto. I'm working on our next project, right? My whole project has always been the Brown Recluse. I was like, what? He said, well, let me hear it. And I heard it, and it was on My Future, and it was with Klondike Cat. And I was like, God.
I'm gonna take you back to 1980. People thought she was crazy for keeping her baby, being only 13, thinking how she would love her son. Barely a child herself, now she would mother one.
And them hustling on the street, don't play them for weak, cause them will shoot ya. We a young killer, gangster, rude boy, destined for death, yet I'm your future. How can a youth be humble when we live in the age of rage? Too young and naive to conceive that we're taking the early grave.
It was just the sample. It was a sample from it was a Jamaican sample. I know the name of the sample, just losing me, but Palazzo found the sample, right? And it just worked. And I was like, wow. So I had to take one. I had to take an L, you know what I'm saying? And I was like, okay, you know what I'm saying? Go do your thing with them, and with it's whatever. Next thing I know, he brings me a picture and it has a big old chunky dude in the front. I'm like, who's that? Is that Ike? Is that Ike? And Ike back then, he was our little, he was the one that would give us our little, whatever it took for us to get our head right. He was not even, he was not even a rapper and didn't know how to rap or nothing. And here he's in, in the front cover. Now I'm really upset. Man, I got pushed out. This chubby mother lover's, taking my position. Who is this guy? No, he was just there. We just put him in the picture. It looked good. If I was there, I could have, But anyway, next thing you know, Ike Man became a member. He don't even rap. Whatever. I was like, y'all go do what y'all gonna do. I'm still gonna do my thing. And I started, I was gonna look for another rapper. Seriously, I was in that situation. I was looking for another rapper to do my thing. I said, man, you go over there with them and da da da. And so then that's when the Boomerang came. They had their single, and I supported them. I wasn't, it was like my dream. So I told my brother, I said, man, let me tell you right now, I'm always going to be around, and me and let them fight, then we going to fight, you know what I'm saying? But we never did. We kept it respectful, you know what I'm saying? Mexicans got a lot of pride, but, so, and Fileto and I, we're friends to this day, we're real good friends. I mean, so when that happened, I was there, I was around, and I seen what they were doing. I was all there for it. And I was like, man. And then next thing you know, Aggravated just blew up at the Funplex. They did a show at the Funplex. And at that time, we knew Brad. My brother we had done a couple of shows at Club 808. And Brad, Scarface, he would frequent. And he saw my brother and they talked, you know what I'm saying? I was like, man, that's big, dude. And so one day, I wasn't there, but they did a show at the Funplex. They had these notorious blue shirts with Aggravated on there, and people are still trying to find those shirts to this day.
Wow.
And Brad was on stage, from what I understand, and Grim and Aggravated opened up. Well, when they opened up, it was the first time that people understood the word Mexicans. They had never seen. They heard the song, but they didn't see. So this is the first time they see a stage full of 7 Mexicans, and they're up there rapping, and the crowd was like, oh my God. So it really, that show was a turning point. In fact, Scarface, what the story goes is he came out and they were like, Aggravated during his set. Ooh, so they were still chanting, but he took it and, he's like, man, because what it came down to, and K-Rino had said this from the beginning, we need their market, right? It's rap is black. You know what I'm saying? I'm not, we wanted to be the best rappers. On top of being the best Mexican rapper, we wanted to be the best rappers. So, but they needed us too. They wanted our people to buy their records and vice versa, right? Of course, the goal is to get the Anglos to buy it and all the women to buy it, because that's where the money comes in, So that's always been the structure as far as, the goal, even with Carlos. Even with Carlos, And Carlos started, but once that happened, we're like, okay, we're on to something here. You know what I mean? And Aggravated, they did their album, their first album, Accept, and it was a success.
Yes, classic.
It wasn't making them out of worse. It was like, whoa. And I was like feeling like, maybe they don't need me after all, And so long story short, comes this. They had a contract differences between, because Fileto's uncle was the one that was the CEO of
The
Bad
record
Boy.
label?
Yes.
Okay.
And he didn't have anybody sign contracts. After the success of the first album, he was like, maybe I should get some contracts on these guys. So as he did that, he was going to the members that he could actually, manipulate first. He couldn't go to Grimm, because Grimm was, my dad's a lawyer. It's like, okay, well, give me the contract. We'll have my attorney look it over, So, he wasn't going to go to him first. So he went to Slinky and Troublemaker first, and they signed. And they called, and Slinky calls Prankster and says, hey, man, I signed that contract. And Prankster's like, whoa, you did what? You didn't talk to the group? Like, nah. He's like, oh, man, I don't know, dude. He goes, nah, you going to sign? No, I ain't signing that. So now that the group separated, and when that happened, who did they call? They called me because I was working on the Brown Recluse, and they wanted to put out their album before the Aggravated puts up theirs. The fraud Aggravated. And I already had a whole album done as far as the beats. You know what I'm saying? Been done. Just need lyrics. I was looking for a lyricist, remember? Mm-hmm. So now my brother goes, hey, Fileto wants to talk to you. Oh, really? Yeah, man, y'all got to make up, man. We got to do this. We need you. I was like, oh, okay. You know what I'm saying? And I could have been a metal, chingon, but I was like, you know what? This is my opportunity to get back into the group, because I wanted so bad to be back, get into it. And that's why a lot of people think that I'm an Aggravated member. So when I came with that album, we were already using Patrick Lewis and Vincent Studio. They're the CEO of Jam Down Entertainment, Jam Down Records. We were using their studio already right there off of, where Chef Produce is, off of Telephone and Griggs? Mm-hmm. That part, the district part of the offices right there across the street, that's where the studio was. Okay. So it was right in the hood, you know what I'm saying? And we was like right up our alley. So we going over there and we started recording this album and everything. And right in the middle of us recording that album, he signs Little Kiki to Jam Down. And we're like, oh crap, we're label mates. Like that, and we're working on this album. We're like, and then here's Kiki coming in, and he's literally doing Dope Mess with Texas in the same studio that we're doing it, and we're doing it with an engineer named Mark Kidney. And I was like, man, dude, this is wow, and way before all that, Carlos he started doing his thing. He saw what me and my brother were doing, by the way. I take it back to the Unicorn Ballroom, and we used to have the battle raps. And he saw what we was doing, and he finally, he come like fessed up to me, a while back, because and he's like, yeah, I remember that time we were, that's what got me. That's what gave me the bug. I wanted to do the same. That's what, So he saw what we were doing, and actually, we were the ones who would go to the flea markets, go to the Boomerang, go to the radio, the remotes. Mm-hmm. We were the ones that would go to the lowrider shows and sell our CDs. We were the first one at the Los Magnificos car show to actually have music at our booth. And I remember it to this day. It was the same year or the year before Ice Cube came, and our booth was right next to the main stage. And our crowd was the Aggravated album, it had blown up so much that there was a big old crowd in front of our booth, to the point where Ice Cube was like, hey, wait, turn it down. What is going on right there?
Whoa. And
when he did that, all eyes, you know what I'm saying? And back then, we didn't have a stage or anything. We were standing on chairs, rapping, you know what I'm saying? And we weren't disrespectful. We weren't playing our music while he was doing his show, you know what I'm saying? But remember, now you go into the lowrider car shows, everybody's got a music in their booth, and it's so loud you can't even hear the next. But back then, we were the only ones. So everybody could hear our stuff, you know what I mean? And the following just grew from there. It just grew and grew and grew and grew. Carlos saw what we were doing, and I had to give him his props because he's a born hustler, and he just took it to another level, And I was at Jam Down. In fact, the first song that I ever did with Carlos was called Warriors. and it was on the Most Hated album. And he did a verse called MC Torturer, Rhyme Sorcerer.
MC Torturer, Rhyme Sorcerer, warrior of the coroner's formula. It's getting gorier from Paris to Brazoria. Story of the South Park, Mexican destroying. Straight up out that tech.
And I said, you're gonna be the first one. And it was a click song. I said, you're gonna be, even it wasn't an Aggravated member, and I was a Most Hated member. I said, I want 5 other rappers who are not part of the Most Hated to rap on this song before us. And everybody was like, no. So I put Carlos first. It was only because I wanted to put Carlos first. Seriously. I was like, you're not going Grim, you're not. And Grim was always last, right? That's our headliner. And I was like, Troublemaker and everybody, and Ike Man, now he's a rapper, what I'm saying? Which that's another story, because I taught him how to catch the one, spend all night before he rapped his first rap. But so Carlos did his thing and did that. And once we did that, Carlos, like that was my first time I had worked with him at Jam Down. And with that album, The Most Hated, on that song. So he would frequent himself once, of course, Kiki was there. And back in those days, Kiki, and what were they? The Commission, Herschelwood Hardheads, Archie Lee, they would play Madden. They would bet $100 a game. And while they're sipping on their lean and everything, they're playing Madden and stuff. And some of those games were really, really good. So I'm there like watching it. It's like a real game. And Carlos comes in. And he comes in and he's there, and I'll never forget this day. This is the day that changed my life as far as, me moving on to Dope House. Because remember, I'm not an Aggravated member. I'm a Most Hated member, but I didn't sign any contracts. I always kept myself.
Free agent.
Because I'm a producer. I'm the producer. Putting on my chest. Get over there. I'm the Mac in the back. You're the chumps in the front. That's why we fought so much. But Carlos came, I'll never forget, it was a Monday. That morning, I gave a song to my brother. I said, hey, man, I got this song, man. And when I used to do songs, I used to come with the hooks. That was my thing. I wanted to come, it made it easier for the rappers, I would think. I hated being in the studio waiting for them to write something. I'm like, oh, God, I got to go home. My wife wants to leave me, So I had a song with a hook on it, and I was like, I gave it to my brother that morning. That later on that afternoon, I went to Catch a Square Records, which turned into Shut 'Em Down, and I gave it to, I showed Ike Man, because he's like, I got this song, check this out, you know what I'm saying? He's like, all right, you know what I'm saying? Well, Carlos comes to Shut Jam Down that same Monday, and he tells Patrick, the CEO of Jam Down, he says, I'm going to have the biggest record company in Texas. And Patrick looks at him in his Caribbean voice. Come on, Carlos. You're nothing but a comedian rapper. I'll never forget that he said that. And Carlos just laughed. And he's sipping on a, Mickey, some 40, right? And he's sipping. And Carlos always drank his beer warm. I don't understand that. He drank his beer, I'm like, ugh. So he goes outside, and he was in his cousin's Grand Prix green. And in the back seat of the car was his 2 dogs he had just bought, Piglet and Plex. But they were pups, and they just threw up in the back seat of his car. So he's scooping the throat, and he's throwing it out. And I'm going to him, and I'm like, Carlos, did you mean what you said in there? Did you mean what you said, about you being... And he says, oh, hell yeah. I say, hey, man, I got a song for you. It's got a hook. You know what I'm saying? And it was High So High.
I'ma roll 84 till them hoes start clacking. Put them on their back and gotta ask them what happened. Homie, what's cracking? It's good to be back. See me on the slab in a beautiful lag. I'm a dog like Scrappy. My girl try to slap me. Got her by the hand and told her don't get happy. Still sport khakis, got the Saviola. Mr. High Roller moving Coca-Cola while I stay
high so high. Reaching for the sky. Reaching for the sky. High so high.
Me and my player partners.
Please don't blow my high.
Please don't blow my high. I fell off.
And that day, he said, meet me at the compound. Back in the day, that's what we used to call it. Showed him 3 songs, because my deal has always been, to this day, it's the same thing. It's 3 for a G, half up front, half when I'm done. I showed him 3 songs. I know the other 2 songs. I still have them, but we only did one, and that was High So High. And I put it down in the studio, and then he rapped on it, and he put an ad in the green sheet in the paper for a singer, and 3 girls showed up. Marilyn did the hook, and she's a tall, beautiful black woman, and she was just so tall, and she sang. Carlos loved her voice, came on the song. That was on Wednesday. On Thursday morning at Club AM, it was DJ Kool-Aid, and Carlos was, let's go test it. And I was nervous. I was like, because it was, boom, 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 boom.
Right.
So it was more like a pop song to me. But Carlos had, tricked it out so much. When Kool-Aid put it on the dance floor was empty. And he's like, this is a new song from South Park Mexican. This is after Hustle Town, right? This is for Third Wish. This is and so he played the boom, 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 and the dance floor just started filling up. By the end of the song, I don't know if it was because it was after hours and everybody was already feeling good.
But it's a classic too, the sample that it's from too.
Right.
So it's
Silver Convention, Casey and the Sunshine Band.
Mm-hmm.
Fly Robin Fly.
Mm-hmm.
My inspirations come like that. I don't work on a song. I let songs come to me. It's kind of like when you find a pet, you know what pet you want, and you go try to find that pet. But when you find that pet and you come home, it's the pet that found you that you take home, right?
That's right.
That's the way I feel about music. I don't go out looking for it. So High was one of those songs. I heard it on the radio and I was blazing and I was like, fly, Robin, fly. And I was like, man, I'm so high. And that's how I wrote the hook and gave it to Carlos. Catchy. By the end of that song, it was, man, they were dancing. And I was like, whoa. I promise you, girl, the next day, I guess homie Marco Kool-Aid showed it to homie Marco. I was on my way to work. Mind you, I had showed it to my brother and Ike, right? That same week. And I go to work, I'm on the Pierce Elevated, and I turn the radio on and I hear the very end in homie Marco, yeah, that's right. That's that new song from SPM. It's called High So High. And if you haven't heard it, here it goes again. And he played it back to back. So now, if you know what Pierce Elevated is and the Dope House is, it's Houston Avenue. You go underneath the freeway, you get on Washington, and you turn. So I'm right there, and I'm like, I'm racing to get there, and Carlos is kicking. He used to get on his chair, and he would kick back. I don't know how he would balance himself, but he would balance himself, and he was just like that. He was just laughing when I pulled up. Dude, it's on the radio. He goes, of course it is. You know what I'm saying? I was like, dang. And so at that time, all my goal was to be like, I wanted to be top 40. You know what I mean? That was my thing. That song did that. I'll never forget when I heard, here's a new song from the rapper South Park Mexican, High So High. I'm like,
what?
when it really hit me, Robert from Southwest Distributor, Robert Gilliman, gave us some tickets to go see the Astro game. My son was 8 years old. I got free tickets to the Crawford boxes. Back then it was Enron Field, I think, before it was Minute Maid. And we're out there, and Jose Lima was a pitcher. He passed away, rest in peace. And he steps up to bat, and they play, so it's Jose Lima, and it's boom, 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 boom. And my son, he looks back at me. He's like, Dad, it's your song. And I'm like, and my wife's, but she wasn't a dream chaser like me. She's like. And so everybody in the crowd is probably thinking that's just my favorite song. They're like, okay, it's his favorite song. Like, chill out, little youngster. You know what I mean? But you know what? That meant so much to me that my son, because I wasn't a good dad in those years because I was always busy and working. I didn't spend a lot of time. That was one of the reasons I took his friend, and it felt so good to hear my son. Yeah. And I felt like telling, my wife, like, see, he's on board.
She's like, don't encourage him.
And that was early, in the game for me, So, it was a big deal for me, and I was like, well, where do I go from here? I was VIP after that. Like, I'd go to 6400 or T-Town on Richmond, go to the shows or go to a club. You know what I'm saying? And I was so used to getting in line, at Hullabaloo's, I'd get in line. And then, everybody's like, hey, Shadow, get your butt over here. You know what I'm saying? Like, so, but true to form, I didn't want to look stupid. I was like, I meant to do this. You know what I'm saying? So I stayed in line, paid my $10 because a lot of people don't even know that Grim has a twin. And I would love going to the shows and being in the crowd, and I would see the flaws that they would make. I said, next time you do this and this and that, and that's where all the throw out the Swisher Sweets and throw the, because back in the days what we would do is throw out discs, right? And we would say, who wants this disc? Who said that? You know what I'm saying? Throw it to them. So those are the little things that you got to do to make it personal, for the people that are out there. And I would put myself as an audience member to capture, the feeling of me watching, something happen in front of me. It was the coolest feeling in the world, honestly. That's what paid me.
Yeah.
It wasn't money. Do I want the money now? Of course. I'm going to be 50 next year.
What?
Yes. But see, I've been 25 since birth.
Yeah.
Like I came out the womb 25. You know what I mean? My mom and dad, they just brought us up to have that maturity, which I really respect Young Easy. I watched his interview with you. He is such a good person and has such, and that pays me. Seeing young Mexicanos doing their thing. You got Dat Boy T, Young Easy, Salmex, and Padron up and coming. I can keep going. Everybody that I see, that's my payment. Because that's what my brother and I started. We started this telling each other, man, can you imagine if that whole rack was full of Mexicanos?
Wow.
And here we go to of course, it's all on. It's all on digital
so
now.
We were talking about that, and with now the digital age has changed, the hustle has changed.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have to do some of the things that you were out doing, which was going out to these gas stations and doing the footwork.
Right.
It's still footwork, but in a different way. And we were talking about how you felt a little like you weren't I guess you felt like you have to start all over again because you have to build your Instagram following these days. If you don't have like 10K plus or more, they're looking at you like, oh, he must be a nobody. You know, and
my Instagram right now is at 850.
800?
850
followers.
That's it. But see, I'm not a type person. DJ Rebel's been helping me. Rebel's from Shut 'Em Down. So he was there coming up with me, and he does what I do. We're literally in the background. We rap, but we're not in the spotlight.
Right.
So the good thing about that is because he was following what I was doing, and he came over with me, and we shared each other's, So when I got out the game because I wanted to go be with my wife and get my family back. By the way, I got them back.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. I got them back.
God is good.
Got my grandkids. It's like Job. I got double for my trouble. I lost everything, but I got everything back times 2.
That's great.
So my wife and I are just wonderful. We just bought a house in Pearland, our dream house, and so we're making it.
And I like that. I like that story because at some point you do have to make that choice. You have to make that decision when you're an entertainer. Mm-hmm. And you took time off. Mm-hmm. The good thing is that what you have here, the heart and the talent and the skill, that doesn't go away just because you took time off.
Right.
Now it's kind of getting back on those training wheels again, learning how the industry has changed and learning how to fit your way back in. And you've always kind of been the behind the scenes guy. So it's nothing where you feel like, well, my time has passed and yada, yada, yada. It's just like, you know what? Now there's more opportunity. I got what I needed to do with my family. Now it's full support.
She bought my last keyboard.
Aww.
And she hated it. She did not want anything to do with this. But full circle.
We talk about that sometimes with a lot of the ladies that, the wives of rappers or, just entertainers in general. And, as women, we're always going to be like, well, what about the family? What about this?
The white picket fence and the family.
We have our vision of what it should be. But what I try to always tell women who are in a position like that, or even if it's a male spouse that's feeling that way, is just like if you try to dim the light with someone and try to take away their passion because of you're shutting down the person that you love, that you know what I mean. So you for her to do that was kind of like that token to say, look, this is what you love. This is your passion.
I think that she didn't want me to grow old and bitter, and think like I could have been. even though I made my mark already. See, I didn't even know I made my mark, right? You know, I have a lot of to go. I'm gonna be 50. I'm just getting warm.
Yeah.
You know, I'm talking to AD and Wolfpack. He wants to do like a tribute. I'm talking to Glass House, who are kind of new and coming up.
Yeah.
I like their style because they remind me of us when we were, you know, the most hated and aggravated.
No doubt.
They still have that, you know, that mentality. I'm working with Patrick and Silos.
Yeah, so let's talk about the projects that you're working on now. So you're working with artists. Besides, you know, you getting back in the game, what else can we look forward to?
I just got to finishing an album with, we're in the mastering with Mark Kidney, by the way.
Full circle.
And the album is with South Park Mexicans with Carlos, and it's called Devil's Mansion.
Nice.
People had heard it before. This album is 17 years in the making. Ever since he got locked up.
Wow.
We've been talking about it. We recorded it in 2006 when he did his civil trial here. He had been shipped to the Harris County jail. So initially this album was called The County Boys. He got everybody in his cell to rap on this album. Literally, like we even got one white guy, they call him Harry Potter. Can't rap for shit, you know what I'm saying? But Carlos wrote most of these guys' lyrics, you know, but they were, and we did it over the phone. We did every single song over the phone without any music.
Wow.
Snapping our fingers to the tempo. They would listen to it. And Carlos has always been that way. Carlos would write songs to clicks anyway. Back in the days, he would like, just give me, you know, this tempo. And he would just get the metronome and he would write, you know, lyrics just to the tempo. And so, okay, match that beat to
You know,
that
people
tempo.
ask that. How does he do it? Well, there you go.
He's a genius. He's a lyrical genius. There's no other way to put it. He's just, he knows how to put what he's saying or thinking into words that everybody can relate to.
Yes.
He's just, he's a lyrical, I call him a lyrical prophet, lyrical genius. He's been like that forever. When he wrote his first rhyme, I think, which was Revenge, he wrote 200 verses before he wrote Revenge. He became this person that could just write all of a sudden, you know, and because I never knew. I grew up with him. I've known him since I was 9 years old. We all came up in the same neighborhood. Billy Stout, Carlos Coy. They were the ones that my mom wouldn't warn me about. She didn't even know Carlos is that guy right there. Of course, we did everything that we used to run around, do everything our parents told us not to do, and that's you know. So back in the days, he was not rapping or anything like that. I knew him from that era, from going to school. You know, whenever he did go to school. So he I remember in the neighborhood, the first thing I found out about Carlos was that he had stole a horse, and his sister pimped him out. You know, he came home. I guess he couldn't find a car, so he jacked a horse. True story. Hey.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a true story. I got so many stories. Like, me and Carlos, we became so his producer that I was his valet driver. I was his, you know, right-hand man. When he was going through all that stuff, like literally, he wasn't even get dropped off at his house that day. Because it was Labor Day when he got on and got into all that trouble.
Wow.
I was supposed to take the car home. I was supposed to drop him off, and I was going to take the car home. He ended up dropping me off, and I said, "Don't go home, Carlos." It was Labor Day. Everybody was at home with their families. I was like, I didn't tell. I said, "Go home, Carlos." That's what it was like. "Don't go out, Carlos. Just go home." Man, I wish I would have told him, like, because he got in trouble that night. But we were best friends, you know, and we did everything together. We fought, we argued, you know, and I think I'm getting off subject.
You're
but
like family. So when is that album? What do you have a date for the schedule?
We just got through mastering it. Like I said, it's 15 years in the making. I made it. We did it in 2007. He came to the Ramsey unit in 2015 or 14, and he asked me, "What did you ever do with that album?" You know, here it is 10 years later. I was like, "I put it together. Can I hear it?" And I was like, "Yeah." Mind you, Carlos will call you over the phone. He doesn't have a cell phone.
Or like that.
Yeah, no, he
just
never,
calls you.
He calls you legitimately with their phone, the government's phone. And I don't know how he got all this, you know, well, he's got, you know, he pays for all these calls. I even have a skit that AT&T called the phone. It's like, due to the number of calls on this phone, we're going to have to shut it down. Seriously, I got that skit at the house when we were doing this album, over the phone. So
it's done.
Done. It's mastered. In fact, mastered. In fact, that's what we. Carlos, he's very perfectionist and everything. But when Mark Kidney's telling me, okay, you need to come now because I'm doing the mastering. Yes. First he was mixing it, now he's mastering it. And I'm like, wow. 17 years later, that's what is coming up next. I'm so excited about it.
Yeah, we all are.
The album, I wish, the question people ask me all the time is, what do you think Carlos would be rapping about today if he was been out? I said, oh my God,
can you imagine?
Wow.
Especially with social media and wow.
Oh my God, I think he would be the Mexican Jay-Z. He's that kind of a mogul. He's gifted.
Yeah.
And he would have eventually instead of bringing my brother from the forefront, bring him to the forefront, set him from the back. And I think he would have generated, a lot of for everybody, for all Mexicans, because that's what that was our thing.
And I think that the things that you've done, with the movement, with Most Hated, people like Carlos, and of course the other guys that were already doing stuff, like you said, the Street Military people, the K-Rino, South Park Coalition, all of that stuff is what we're doing today. Too, right. Because even with SPM and hearing those types of records, it made us proud to hear somebody talking about beans and chanclas and things like that we didn't normally hear.
Right.
And even when we did hear the stuff from East Los, it was like, well, we could relate because we're Mexican, but we don't really know the LA vibe the way we know, the Texas vibe.
The Chicanos in LA are a lot different. In fact, when we went up there on the north side of California, Gotos was there. I remember they threw batteries and lighters at us because of his name. That's why he changed it to SPM. One of the reasons, because it had South in it. Carlos never won. Carlos, there's only two races in this world: is players and haters.
Hey.
Carlos was wanted to do an organization called Grow. Gangs Are Out. That was like our thing. We didn't want to be a part of hurting our people.
Hurting the businesses and robbing our own and that kind of stuff.
It was all about being a hustler. It was all about green. It was all about coming together. And I think that's the difference between, and not knocking the youngsters nowadays. I see GT Garza, I see all these guys, Dat Boy T, Young Easy, and the difference between that generation and our generation is the fact that even though Salty Water Records, Pancho and Tommy, even though shut them down with D-Town and Ike Man and Rebel, and Dope House with Rashid and Grim and Low G, we had our differences. 1 or 2 or 3 times a year we'd get together to make money, and I don't see that now. You know what I'm saying? And it's nothing against them. You know what I'm saying? I just think that
unity. It
just needs that unity. And today's age, I don't know what it is. Am I that old that I don't get it? You know what I'm saying? I mean, what's going on? But that's what I see.
Well, I think that your comeback will really be another piece of that glue, along with what we're trying to do. We always, of course, we focus on Latinos. We don't leave anybody out. It's black, brown, white, whatever. Just come in. Let's make this music. Let's represent for H-Town. Let's represent for Texas. Let's represent for our raza, our people, hustlers in general. But I just want to say thank you so much. We're blessed to have you. Thank you for your contribution. Thank you for continuing to put out work. Thank you for stopping by and sharing your stories, your memories.
Absolutely.
And, just schooling us on all the old school. So thank you so much.
Whenever you want me to come, we got more stories and more gossip to tell.
We want to hear more.
Hey, just follow my Instagram, Shadow the OG. At Shadow the OG. I've been writing a lot of stories and posts about the history. That's what's coming with. That's what brought up the book. So it's called Grim and Shadow. Who started this? So just follow me. I know I don't post stories every day. I do have a regular job from 9 to 5. So it's a work in
followers up. So follow them again. It's OG
Shadow the OG.
Shadow the OG.
Shadow the OG on Instagram. Real quick, I want to say I lost a friend of mine on Friday to a motorcycle accident. His name is Oscar Visoso. I miss you. I want to see you soon. I'm going to see his family this weekend. But I had to. I'm sorry, but I miss you, Oscar. I miss you so much. So thank you so much for everything.